and there are and is forcing sex upon someone who does not want it, or who is intoxicated, or who is legally not old enough to give consent. And that's what happens a lot with the date rape, the drugs they put in the drinks, or they try to get women intoxicated, or they try to get them high, and they take advantage. And then there's child molestation. Child molestation, again, is a sexual contact with a child. Many children who are molested are too young to know what is happening and may not fight back. They don't have the utility to fight back. And if it's, again, child on child, they don't have the utility to know that this is inappropriate. And then there's incest, proximity. That's the only thing that makes incest so prominent, and because it's proximity. People you sleep with, people, family members you go to their home, in your home. And unfortunately, there is still a case of parents who molest, siblings who molest, uncles, aunts, cousins who molest. And it's something to consider, because people's sexual appetite is developed by external cues, things that they've seen, things that they've watched or experimented with, or internal things that they have been exposed to, even in utero, like spiritual. That's more of the spiritual realm, where you see now some of the children of these celebrities, I said it last time, are coming out, and they have these curious sexual appetites. And if you are someone of faith, you understand that demonic activity can linger over families. And so that incestuous demon, perverse demon that runs in families that causes this incest, can be continuous. It's almost like David. He had, we know, a very strong sexual appetite, as he had many wives and he slept with Bathsheba. And then his children began to display, his son began to display, two sons, Solomon and his other son, I want to say Absalom, also had that, if I'm wrong, Bible thumpers, forgive me, also had that sexual appetite, so much so that he began to lust after his sister, Tamar, and he was sick with it. He became, I would say, demonically influenced, where he just wanted what he wanted, and eventually he had to have her. And when he had her, he no longer wanted her. He didn't want to marry her, because marriage entails you wanting to join with someone and be a benefit to them, and they be a benefit to you. Lust is always one-sided, where you're not wanting to be a benefit to someone else, but you want to take. Lust takes, love gives. So that is a differentiation and understanding, the aspect of sexual abuse is that it is taking, it is not giving on any level. It is not considering the wellness and the well-being of the other person, and it's definitely not obeying God. And then there's the non-consensual, we talked about, sexual contact. That category includes unwanted sexual touching, such as groping, pinching, attempted rape can also fall into this category. And lastly, non-contact sexual abuse. And this would be, for instance, when parents are exposing their children to pornography, or they're seeing their parents naked, or they're seeing their parents involved in sexual activity, or neighborhood kids showing someone inappropriate sexual content. Those would also be considered sexual trauma. Now, one of the reasons why, beyond disobeying God and doing things not God's way, one of the ramifications is that psychologically we are not made to integrate sex on that level, especially children. They don't have the full brain development to synthesize the experience into their emotions and into their mind. So this event is just there looming, and it's distressful, and it feels shameful, and it feels bad. And even if you don't have the language, even if you're pre-verbal, and it happens when you're a baby or 1 or 2 and you don't have the language, you still have the experience and you have the emotion. And the consequence of that, it carries shame, and it carries feeling dirty, and all of those self-condemning things, because when children feel a certain way, they interpret it as their identity, and adults as well. So that is part of it. They cannot integrate something that was not supposed to happen. It wasn't supposed to happen. Adults can't even integrate that into their psyche if they're sexually abused because it's inappropriate. Sex is powerful, y'all. It's God's plan and it's beautiful when it's beautiful. But when it's not, it is damaging and life altering psychologically, as I stated, and spiritually, as I stated. It has a very serious residual impact. And spiritually, it has a very strong residual impact. And so what we want to look at as well is that some of the things in our findings, it shows that those who are, like, one of the residual effects of sexual trauma is drug use. And it says that those who have been experienced a childhood sexual abuse, they're 2.5 times more likely to make suicide attempts and to also have poor health and poor overall health. They have pain, fibromyalgia, they have gastrointestinal symptoms, gynecology symptoms. They have heart issues, obesity, and then on a relationship level, there's a disruption. Sometimes you can't sustain a relationship because of the intimacy needed, or because someone's just a serial cheater because they have this sexual impulse that they have not been able to manage as a result of being exposed to sex the wrong way. So now they can't be faithful. And we just think it has to do with commitment, but it is dealing with the sexual trauma and adjusting the brain and the way the brain is functioning from firing and wiring together. So it has to do more of, it can be like an addiction. And we do have people who are sex addicts as a result of sexual trauma. And so that's something to remember too. And sometimes we want to just make people repent, or we want people to tell us they love us and show their love by being committed, but without dealing with the impulsivity and the addiction component. The addiction component is the whole craving, the whole romanticizing, thinking about it, the craving, the anxiety associated with wanting it and needing it, and then not being able to control the impulse, and then feeling guilty and feeling horrible, and then just really repeating that cycle of guilt, abuse, and use. And so it is an abuse cycle. And if you're somebody who's dealing with that, you know how difficult it is. And we are going to talk about treatment for it, but we want to talk about the impact, and we're going to talk about prevention and treatment. But so it varies. So with that, I'll just give you this, you are going to have to seek some help. And yes, prayer is wonderful, but you have to understand what's going on with your brain, because you can't defeat an enemy that you're not familiar with. So you have to understand how that evil influence is inflating your trauma and your sexual drives and causing you to be led by your flesh or by your desires. It's an addiction. It's a physiological addiction. It's a brain issue as well as a spiritual issue. And so you want to know that you're fighting on all fronts, and you're just not an evil person, but you're a person who was exposed to sex inappropriately. And so now you're trying to get back to the garden. You're in this forest. Everything goes on in the forest. So you're trying to get back to the garden. The garden always represents God's order. But as long as you're in the forest, you're going to have forest behaviors, you're going to have forest cravings, and you're going to have forest behavior. And so it's deeper than that. And yes, prayer is a part of it, but prayer is not the only thing. And even if prayer worked, and say your pastor prayed for you and it kind of helped you to deal with the addiction of it, you're going to have to maintain your deliverance, because you're going to have to know how the enemy is coming at you. Because remember, in this flesh is a garden and a forest. And so the enemy remembers, and he brings to your senses the images and the desires and the experiences, and your flesh will literally crave it. And sometimes people feel like craving is permission to indulge. And so you want to be wise and you don't want to be ignorant, but we want to be wise and understand Satan's devices. And then there's sometimes what happens because of sexual trauma. You could, like I stated, you could be hypersexual or hypo, meaning you're not sexual at all. And so you get in this marriage where you want to basically hang from the chandelier. If your person is just never satisfied and they say, let's try this, let's try that, let's try this, that, third, and the other. Not to say that you shouldn't have, be free to, explore in a way that is honoring God, but you should be satisfied. Okay, let me give you this example. There's a difference from McDonald's and a home cooked meal. When you get a good home cooked meal from mama or grandmama, you are full, you are straight. But if you eat that McDonald's and you eat junk food and you eat stuff like that, all you're going to do is get sick and you're still going to be hungry. So when you are having unauthorized sex, you are having junk food and you'll never be satisfied. It's insatiable. The flesh will never be satisfied. But the moment you fulfill your spirit, it satisfies everything. And so it reduces the craving and the desires, and it reroutes and it remaps your love map. So it teaches you that there is a garden approach to love making and to marriage. And you don't have to live in the forest. Tell somebody, I know this sounds churchy and cliche and it's over the airway, but tell somebody no more forest sex. Garden.